It's a new day in the shop, and today I should be working on pulling the transmission out of this. But what sounds a lot more fun than that is playing with this. So this is an 82 or 3, something like that, Mercedes 300D. It's got the 5-cylinder turbo diesel in it. And I haven't had one of these cars for a long time. And now I don't only have one, but I have two. And this one here, believe it or not, is the one that's going to be getting the restoration. Because it only has 139,000 miles on it. And this is accurate. The tach does work, even it looks like I just reset it because I did. But everything in here does actually work, which is really nice. And like the dash is in great shape. It's not cracked at all. This car has a lot of potential, and it's a color that I really like. The only problem with it is it needs a lot of little things. And that's where this car comes in. This car is super duper rusty, but it's got all the little trim pieces and things that I'm going to need for the other car. But like, it's so rusty that the seats are not attached into the floor anymore. You can see a little bit of the rot sticking down already. The jack points actually look decent, which is interesting, without putting any pressure on them. But this car has 456,000 miles on it. And, of course, since it's a 300D, this thing still runs perfect. Well, as close to perfect as you can expect for a car with 450,000 miles on it. I want to take this engine out and put it into my Willys pickup, which is going to be a whole build series on its own, because it's getting the works. Right now, it is just a bare chassis with a cab on it. So this is going to be the engine for that, which is why I wanted to have a running car. And we actually had to get this running when I picked it up because it was actually hydrolocked. The previous owner did an oil change on it, and then it ran for a couple minutes and then hydrolocked because he filled it way, way, way over full. So over here on this side, the air filter sits right here. I do have it. It's in the back of the car right now. It sits on top of this, and this actually goes down, and because the oil was so full, the bottom of this tube was into liquid oil and sucking it up, putting it through the turbo, right into the intake, and then right into the cylinders, which is what hydrolocked it. So when I picked it up from my buddy up in northern Ohio, we pulled the glow plugs out and cranked it over by hand a bunch, got the oil out of all the cylinders. It was actually only in cylinders 1 and 2, and a little tiny bit in 3, but 4 and 5 didn't have anything come out of them. Spun it over a few times by hand, put the injector lines back on, hit the key, fired right off. This thing actually runs pretty good. But I noticed the oil pressure gauge doesn't work. So I did some looking into it. I found this hose here that looks like it goes into the interior, and I noticed there's nothing off the back of the oil filter housing attached anymore, like as far as hoses and lines. So I'm thinking that the oil pressure gauge was cut out of it. And the reason for that, if you don't know, these cars have a mechanical oil pressure gauge. And, let me turn some light on. This one was clearly leaking by the rag and the oil stains. So, it's a shame this didn't happen before the floors rotted out, because this would have been a great protectant against rust. But, clearly it was leaking. I'm going to pull this out of here. Yeah, see, that's just all engine oil from up in there. We're just going to throw that right in the trash. We don't need it anymore. But when you start the car, like I said, no oil pressure gauge. But it also doesn't leak on the floor anymore, so I'm assuming that somebody cut it out. To test that theory, I think we can put some air, steal this, put this into here. Let me use 2 hands for a second. All right, I got that shoved in there pretty far. So I've got some air pressure here. If we watch the gauge on the inside when I give it some air, well, it worked until I blew the end of it off. Let's try that again. Let's put this one on here. I'll try to be a little more careful with the applied air. There you go. This car has great oil pressure. Look at that. So this confirms that the oil pressure gauge was cut out of the circuit. I'm just going to put this back over here. Now, what do I want to do with this car? I want to drive this thing around for a little bit to prove out the engine pretty much. I want to see what issues it has. I want to see how it's running when you get up to temperature with some load on it, etc., etc. Because I want to use this in my other build. So I want to know. So today we are going to pop the valve cover off and adjust the valves, because who knows when the last time that happened on this car. And then tomorrow I can go get this thing inspected, get my license plates for it, and honestly start driving it. It's got some hand-cooked tires on it that are from 2022, so I don't think this guy was lying when he said he was daily driving it until he locked it up. So not a bad find for $500. I'm going to get some tools out and clean up some tools from the ZJ that was in here yesterday. The ZJ was in here for a whole front end service, so there's junk laying all over everywhere. That was my last video. This one's not going to come out for a little while after that one, but go check that video out. We got that thing working pretty good. So let's get this valve cover off, see what we see. Actually, before diving into the valve adjustment, I'm going to start this thing up and listen with a stethoscope to the engine to see if there's any clattering in the valve train. This won't help if the valves are too tight, but if they're too loose, it'll tell me. This isn't very great of a way to do this, but I also need to let this car run for a little bit to burn out some of the oil that was in them cylinders, because I haven't done any running of this car yet. And we've just barely wiped the turbo down even, so I'm going to start it up and let it run and burn off some oil and get a listen to it and see what we can hear. But just to show you, let me just trap that right there for a minute. Just to give you an idea of how good this thing still runs. Let's turn it over. We've got to let the glow plugs go. Right up. And it is expected that it's not going to run perfectly smooth because of the oil that's in there. I don't know if you can see it burning off yet. I'm going to back this up about 3 feet and we'll just let this thing run and see what we can hear. Alright, let's been running for a little bit here, and I've been doing some listening around. I'll bring you up close in a second, but it sounds like something's a little clattery on the inside, and I'm not 100% sure what it is. Honestly, it sounds like injector knock with the listening that I've been doing. Especially injector number 1, if you hold a stethoscope up to it, or basically just a metal rod, put your ear up to it, it is way, way louder than the other 4. And you can see right here, it's been hemorrhaging oil. This is from being parked overnight. Remember, I moved it back to let it sit here and run. So that's a lot of oil. And then as I've been revving it here, just giving it some RPM so I can listen to the tone change, we're getting some of that oil out the exhaust too. So I'll bring you up close so you can listen to it. No blow by. I guess you can see that right here. Yeah, nothing. This engine runs really, really good. Solid 80%, I'd say. Let's give it some more RPM and see if the smoke's out of the rear. Oh yeah, she's still burning some oil. Loping a little bit there. We're almost back to a reasonable level. I'm going to wipe that real quick. Still way over full. Now it's surging pretty good. I'm thinking we go take this thing for a drive if it stops smoking so bad. Alright, the turbo seals on this car are shot. Let's see if I can get this on camera or not. I'll give it an honest try. Diesel running around in the back. Let me see. So if I floor it, I didn't do it that. So the past few times when I've done that, it'll build up some boost for a little bit and then just a huge plume of smoke. So it's either that or maybe the injector's cutting out, which I guess would make sense if it was a white cloud. Or sticking a little bit, I guess. I don't know. Something's going on internally with this car, with the oil system. So there's gonna be some looking around if I'm gonna get this one driving without blowing smoke everywhere. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we can certainly look into it a little bit, at least minimally. If not, everything in this car is going into the other car, so it don't matter too much. I at least can know now that this engine actually has really good power behind it, and it's running pretty decent. And most of the time, just putting around, it is not smoking at all. But it's just when I really lay into it, it starts smoking, and there's a couple of times where it left a big plume of smoke. Oh, is it done now? Oh, we might have to take it on another round. It doesn't look like it's smoking anymore. I'll update you here in a minute. Looking clear to me. Get after it again around this corner up here. It's driving really good. I just wish the defroster worked, or the heater at all. The fan doesn't blow. I can't say I'm too surprised that the vacuum system in this car needs some love. I may have to rig that up. I tried all the buttons. It's not working. It's fine. Alright, let's give it a hit around this corner here. It's clean. I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, just a couple of miles of driving. It looks like we've done about 1.5 miles, almost 2 miles, just clearing the oil out of this thing. So I'm really curious to get it back to the shop and see how much oil is left in this car, first of all. And then secondly, just let it sit there and idle while I'm checking the oil and see if the haze has gone away at all, or completely I should say. I'm not seeing anything out of the exhaust anymore, at least from the driver's seat, out of the mirrors, and I'm optimistic. We might be driving this car for a little while just to prove out the drivetrain in it. So instead of fixing anything else, I can get the heater working and then just drive it. So I'll get back with you when I get back to the shop. All right, we got the dipstick wiped clean. See how much oil's in her. Oh, look at that. More than we left with. Yeah, we're gonna have to give this thing an oil change, drain it out. But if we look back here, there's no more haze at all. It is cleared up perfectly. So I'm super, super stoked about that. That means this engine is in great shape. Now there is something that's a little bit loose and clattery in here. I almost think it's the AC clutch. Oh, and that belt is loose. I can see a loose belt in there, so I'll have to do that. I'll have to check that, see if it's rattly, because it sounds like it's out here, not in there. But overall, come on, you gotta be happy with that. And it's got the same exact oil spot in the turbo that we left with, so it's not got any more coming out the front end. So that's pretty cool. I am super, super stoked with that. All right, it's the next day on this car, and there's a couple things I got to do now. Now that it's registered, I went into the DMV. I got the title transfer done today. I got a plate on the back of it, so I need to get this plate off the front of it because that's a big no-go. And then I need to get the seats propped up a little bit because this thing sucks to drive right now. And then we're gonna check the oil again from yesterday. And there was one more thing that I don't remember, so we're gonna ignore that one more thing. And oh, I gotta get the heater working. I think it's gonna be a blown fuse or a loose fuse because just nothing works on the control panel, but one step at a time. So we're gonna start with the seats. So let me show you what that's all about. So this car is a solid 20-footer. It looks great from afar, but it's got some rust, and particularly right at the back of the seats. Let me see if I can, oh, that's way better. Show you there. The seat's just resting against the pillar here for the support. So I'm gonna get some steel underneath it because it's supposed to be held up, oh, about there with a big old gap in between. And it's really hard on the back to drive it as is. If you look underneath, see it's got some rotten floors. We're not too concerned about that, only because this car is going to get torn apart here in a month or two. I want to just drive this thing and prove it out around here locally, just to make sure that the engine is good for my Willys pickup. So I'm just going to put some steel under there for now. Most of the structure of the car is fine, except on the passenger side. The jack points, the front one is just all the way gone. If we look under here, like, it is all the way gone. And it's all repairable. If you really had sentimental attachment to this car, this is all repairable rust. But I have no attachment to this car. It was $500, and I just want the engine out of it and a bunch of trim pieces. I hit the roof and the buzzer started going. I guess the key's still in it. There we go. That was weird, but we'll start with that because this thing sucks to drive like this. You're leaning over super far. I'm going to do it as cheaply and crappily as possible, I think. So I think my game plan is to just prop up the seat, just lift it up from the not floor anymore, and put some angle iron underneath it that goes from the front of the front seat support all the way to the back seat. Just gives us something to brace up against. And then probably bolt it up, But if that seems annoying, I'll just put a little tack weld on it or something. So I'm going to get started on jacking the seats up with the car on the ground, and then we'll see what we get into. All right. So you can see my piece of angle iron in here, hammered down in there. You can see it even pulled the carpet up because it's wedged in there so good. And that seems to be perfect. That chair is not going anywhere. And it actually feels pretty level now. So I'm just going to put this piece of carpet back over there. The bubble wrap was in there already for some reason. So I guess the guy before me was trying to keep moisture out of here. We'll keep it, I guess. But I have another piece of angle iron here for this seat over here. It's in way better shape, I believe. The chair is, the floor is not. The floor is the same. Worse even. Oh look, he already tried fixing it with a block of wood. We're gonna fix it more professionally with steel. So, one more and then we'll start looking at the heater. Had to get a little more creative with this side. There was less floor, but now there is more floor. So that'll be good enough to hold the seat up. I've sat in it and bounced around in it and tested it out. That thing is solid. So now, I guess I'll clean up my metal from the back seat here. Now we can finish the professional repair and give it one of these. Get it around the seat bracket. Oh, look at that. You never know. But next, we're going to diagnose the heater. So if I can get that blower motor working on heat at all, that'd be fantastic. So I can drive this thing around. And shoot, then I guess we'll do some stuff under the hood besides just check the fuses. All right, we've got the fuse panel off, and you can see right here, fuse 8 is for the blower motor. And if we look at fuse 8 in the fuse box, see labeled 8 right here, it's sitting there crooked, but also if you look at the back of it, it doesn't have the metal plate that that's supposed to attach to. So that's going to take some investigation. So first off, I'm just going to pull this out. Take a look at what we're working with. I wouldn't doubt if that's the reason that it's not working. That's pretty interesting. So I'm going to try to just get get a screwdriver and pull that out of there a little bit. And then actually what I'll do, I'll stick a piece of metal in there and stick the fuse back in it. And just for right now, I'll test the continuity on it and see if that makes the blower motor kick on. Because if it does, then I know I can pursue that as my fix. And if not, it's going to be something in there. But the blower motor should be electric. All the other stuff is vacuum under there, but the blower motor is electric. And then the blower motor resistor over here actually looks pretty good. Doesn't have a lot of rust or anything on it. So I imagine it was working very, very recently. So I'm going to do that real quick. And then I saw my throttle keeps coming out. This bushing is blown out like it is on every single car. And it's got this temporary fixed thing in here. And that's good. The heater hoses are warm. But it's got this temporary fixed half bushing thing in here. Hadn't been done quite right. But this keeps sliding all the way to the left because you can see it's got some room to slide here. And when it does, this kind of falls out and I don't get very good throttle response. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a small hose clamp right here to keep this from sliding in anymore. And then we're going to have to be careful on the test drive after doing that and make sure that the throttle doesn't stick. So we'll actuate it a few times before we even start the car. If it feels good, we'll do a controlled test drive on a bunch of back roads just to make sure the throttle doesn't stick. And then we can be sure that that'll fix that little issue. But back to this for now. So step one, I just put the fuse back the way it's supposed to be, even though it's kind of inset in there. Check it out. frost is always that. We've got blower motor. We even got auto. So cool. We can leave that alone. Turn the key off. We can leave that alone. We'll call that fixed, because I did clean off the ends. I think that helped a little bit too. But we'll call that fixed, and we'll move on to that. All right, I got my hose clamp in here. I left it loose actually on purpose so that it doesn't grab and stick onto anything in here, but it still acts as the spacer. That way the throttle shouldn't stick at all. I've actuated it a few times. It does pretty good. It does still allow this to come out a little bit, but it's a lot better than it was before, and it's a free fix because I had hose clamps. So I'm going to call that good. I guess next we need to look into checking the oil because we've been sitting here for a minute. And then I need to put an air filter on it. I've just been driving it with the turbo open for testing purposes to see if it was going to puke stuff out the front. It hasn't. It's had that exact same little puddle the whole time. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little wipe. So that ought to be good now. And that's okay. So yeah, let's put a filter on here. Check for play. Actually feels pretty decent. So throw a filter on it. And then pull it outside, just start driving this thing. So that'll be cool. Well, for now, that's going to be all for this car. I got the license plate removed. I checked the oil, did all the stuff that I showed you guys. We're going to shut the hood, start driving this thing, and prove out this engine for my Willys pickup. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to stay tuned for projects I'm supposed to be working on, like this truck right here, and a bunch of other stuff that I got sitting out in the yard. See you guys in the next one.